Our next story, which is the fact that working from home parents are apparently being accused of contributing to the rise in Friday school absences. This shows that 50,000 more pupils were absent at the end of the week than at the start. Now, we all know that the pandemic saw kids locked up at home, having to try and, do their classes remotely. And ever since the pandemic, they decided they didn't want to go back to school. And so what was once about 4.7% of kids absconding, truanting, jumped to 7.6% post-pandemic and has now remained at around 7%, despite the government trying to go after the truants and make kids turn up to their lessons. Well, what is going on? Is it the fault of parents working from home? Who better to ask than the glorious Chris Snowdon, who's head of lifestyle economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
Are you working from home?
Yeah, but I usually do. This is not a post-pandemic change for me.
Do you have any sort of spawn sitting next to you, controlling your microphone, ready with a hole punch to do your deeds, to help you in your affairs as you decide not to turn up to the office today? Or is that just pie in the sky when it comes to casting blame on who's responsible for school absenteeism?
No, I don't, and I don't know why anybody would want that. I'm not quite sure what the mechanism is here. I mean, I'm not saying that this claim is wrong. I just would like to see a bit of evidence and see, is there a spike in kids being off school on Fridays? And is it connected to people working from home? If you're working from home, I think the last thing you'd want would be a child running around.
Right, and the first thing you'd notice is if they hadn't gone to school. Surely if in the office, then the kid can go do a U-turn at the bus stop and go back in and get the big bowl of Rice Krispies and turn on CITV or whatever it is they watch these days.
Yeah, so I don't see the connection. Like I say, I'm not saying that this claim is necessarily wrong, and there has been a big increase in, as you've already said, in kids being off school, and persistent absences, which has been off school for 10% or more of the days, has doubled to 25% actually since the pandemic. So there's a real serious issue here around kids being off school, but I'm not convinced it has much to do with people working from home, which has also increased massively. Obviously, that's quadrupled since the pandemic.
I mean, one thing that Matthew Larser and I, who's in the studio with me today, Chris, were talking about during the break about this story is perhaps it's because now that when people say they're working from home, in air quotes for those people listening and not watching, they're not really working at all, are they? They're halfway up the M4 going down to Devon to go sit in the sunshine in a nice pub with a pint of cider, which is what I would do if I wasn't at work today. And that maybe they're taking their kids with them. And in fact, all of this sort of working from home culture is not working at all. And it's just long weekends and, oh, well, we better take the kids because who else is going to look after them if we don't?
Well, that's very cynical. I must admit the thought did cross my mind as well, that it might be a long weekend issue more than anything. But I don't think it's probably the big contributor here. We're talking about a huge number of kids and a huge number of parents. And, I don't think that people who are working from home, I would say this as somebody who works from home a lot of the time, but I mean, they're not dawdling around. And employers wouldn't allow so much working from home if it wasn't, if it wasn't working, if it was having a major effect on companies' efficiency, then it wouldn't happen. I actually think the working from home thing, and again, self-interested here, but I think it seems to be working very well. It also seems to be really helping with staff retention. It seems to be one of the main reasons that employers are letting people have at least 1 or 2 days working from home. It's not reducing their efficiency, and so a lot of employers say that actually people are more productive. And it's retaining staff. So look, it's working well, and it's in itself it's efficient because people have to spend less money on commutes and so on.
Yeah, interesting, because one of the accusations against working from home is that it's sort of decimated city centres because they're lacking footfall. The sandwich shops and the post-work bars and pubs are lacking the staff who once frequented them, and so they're losing trade. But what was interesting, I thought, was an announcement, I think it was by Heineken, as a brewery, saying that they're going to pump a load of investment now into their suburban pubs and their village pubs because people are working from home, would rather go there.
Yeah, I mean, these things balance out across the economy. So undoubtedly, there are fewer people going out for work drinks in London city centre on a Friday. I think that's undeniable, and that's almost certainly got a lot to do with working from home. Huge numbers of people now are working from home on a Friday, so that's obviously bad for those pubs, but presumably it's good for the suburban pubs. And if people are buying fewer sandwiches from Pret in London, they're maybe buying more sandwiches wherever they live. So I don't think we should focus too much on the losers here, because there's probably just as many winners.
But what do you think think is behind this rise in school absenteeism? I mean, can we blame that? I mean, clearly there is a direct correlation between before and after pandemic when it comes to truancy. 4.7% in 2019 to 7.6% in 2021. And that's basically not really fallen, despite the government trying to get on top of it and tackle that issue. So what is the connection, do you think, between the pandemic and making kids work from home themselves during that and not be able to go to school, and then now them not turning up to school again, now they can?
Well, I think some children have simply disappeared through cracks in the system. They were obviously told to stay at home during the pandemic, and they just never came back. But I think also for a lot of children, or indeed their parents, the teaching unions behaved pretty disgracefully during COVID in refusing to open up the schools, even when the virus was at very low levels in the community. They were incredibly stubborn about it until the bitter end. And they sent a message out basically saying that, it doesn't matter if your kid doesn't go to school. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. If you close down the schools for a year, give or take, here and there, then you're sending a message out that going to school is basically optional. They were very insistent this is going to have no effect on people's grades and their education. So naturally, people just thought, OK, well, won't bother going to school then?
Yeah, one assumes that the rise in not going to school on a Friday is more to do with the fact that kids are done 4 days and then they can't be bothered. They feel a bit knackered and think, well, it's almost the weekend, I'll just bunk off.
Sure, but I mean, that's something that the school should be just clamping down on, right? That's just standard truancy. I don't know whether the parents are complicit in it or not. I don't know if working from home has much to do with it, but that seems to me basic truancy. You deal with that. The more concerning issue is the kids who basically just disappeared from the system altogether.
Now, interestingly, when you look at the statistics in all of this, the gap is biggest in primary schools, suggesting parents rather than pupils are driving this Friday attendance gap. So we're talking about what is the link here. Primary pupils are 21% more likely to be absent on Friday and 24% more likely to be absent without reason. So these aren't exactly this sort of spotty teens going to drink cider on a park bench together and test out vaping. These are little uns.
Yeah, and I think that probably is where you get the sort of long weekend effect. I think it's fair to say that most parents are less bothered about their kids being off at primary school than they are at secondary school. A lot of people don't think anything of taking their kids out of school for a week, for example, to get a cheaper holiday at primary school. But when you get to secondary school, they've got exams coming up. I think people take it a little bit more seriously. And to be perfectly honest with you, rightly so. You can easily miss a week or so of primary school. It's not going to hold you back.
Oh, that pandemic, it changed the culture of the nation in more ways than one. Chris, it's always wonderful having you on the programme.